So our project is entitled Teaching Personal Finance and Money Management Curriculum to High School Students. Our faculty mentor is Susan Minke.
Okay, so first off, before I get into the abstract a little bit, just kind of a quick review. We have a couple copies of our curriculum that I'm going to pass one to each side. It's pretty long, so we'll talk a little bit about it later, but I want to hand them out so everyone has a chance to look at them here. So here's that. So this is kind of just a quick review of our project, why we did it. Thousands of students each year apply to IPFW, and I'm obviously all of you guys. But a lot of them lack just basic personal finance and money management skills. So things like student loans and interest, some students just have no idea about, which kind of boggles my mind. Going into schools, that's a pretty big deal. So we really started this project to have some sort of way where we could teach those skills and kind of beat college students to the punch. So we wanted to go into mainly high schools with junior, senior classes, present our curriculum to them, let them know what to expect coming into college. So basically that's what this says here. We created this curriculum that you guys are looking at right now. It is in line with the Department of Education standards for Indiana, as that's a pretty big deal, as we were able to go into teachers and say, hey, look, we have this nice curriculum for you, and it meets all your standards. Can we come in and present to your class? So that's kind of this slide here.
So as Logan said, the purpose was to first educate prospective IPFW students. Our goal wasn't to make them come to IPFW by the end of our presentation, but we found as we were going into classrooms that a lot of people were planning on applying to IPFW, so that was helpful. We wanted to make sure that we reached out to areas that were in this region, just because we knew that most of the students that go to IPFW are from around Northeast Indiana or Northwest Ohio. And we also set a goal last year when we started this presentation that we wanted to focus on schools and churches. So as you can see, our goal was to reach 650 students. We found the same problem that Austin had in the fact that you can email teachers all day long and say, here's an awesome presentation, it aligns with your teaching standards, we will come in for free and teach it to your students, and they don't respond. And so we had a goal of about 6 to 8 classrooms that we wanted to get to, and we ended up getting to 14, which was so awesome.
So we kind of shared a little bit about why we're doing the project, but it's really to teach those students what they need to know, whether they're going to college or going to a trade school, or whether they're just going right into a trade right out of high school. Everyone needs these skills that we're teaching. They're not all just about student loans and interest. Some are about personal spending habits, how to make a budget, stuff about investments, because when they get to that next job that they have, they're going to have a 401k. Well, how do they know what a 401k even is, let alone what they need to have in it? So we kind of talked a little bit about that in our project, just wanting to set them up for what the real world has for them.
So the first step was finding the right audience. We knew that we wanted to go into high schools, and so we got some data from the IPFW archives. This was for 2015 because we started this crazy, but 2 years ago. And so as you can see, there's a list of counties and then the number of students that enroll or that are planning to show some interest in IPFW as they pick a college. So as you can see, Allen County, rightfully so, is the highest. We took from those counties, we went and sorted out the high schools within those counties, and we're able to kind of target the areas that we were going to contact first. It was just a plan of attack of these schools are going to give us the best exposure, so we'll head there first.
So the average class size, we have some pictures at the end here to show you, but an average class size is around 25 students. We went to 8 schools, which accounted for 14 classes. There were some schools, I think East Noble was one, where we went to 5 classrooms, so we stayed there the entire day.
It was awesome. Teachers would start to hear about our presentation from other teachers within that high school and then ask, can you stay around and speak to my 4th period class? Mm-hmm. And it was awesome that
Columbia City was another one where we would go into a school. I don't remember the teacher's name. But she also let some other teachers know that we had contact with later on. We didn't actually go into it again, but we're kind of, like she said, spread around the schools that we were doing our thing. So total, we reached about 350 students.
So here's a little bit of a timeline. Jump in our time machine and go back to 2 years ago, our junior year, first semester. We first met with Dr. Minke and we said, what should we do? We want to utilize all of our majors in some way and educate. What would be a good idea? And so we got the idea for this project. September 1st, right off the bat, we completed an IRB training course, very lengthy. But it allowed us to publish our results, first of all, and second, it allowed us to create the curriculum and be able to distribute it to teachers. And they actually have a copy of that curriculum so that they can use it in future years in their classroom. Then, shortly after that, we started creating surveys because we didn't know what we wanted to talk about. We didn't want to just pick blindly 5 topics for our lessons. We wanted to make sure that it was actually something that was going to matter to these students. So we made our surveys. September 21st, we met with Dr. Downs, and he helped us really focus in on what we were doing with our project and set some really important objectives. September 25th, we started emailing professors at IPFW and distributing the surveys. We'll talk about the results here in a bit. And then in October, we administered the surveys and we started creating the curriculum. And the curriculum took so much longer than we thought it would. We are now experts on Indiana Department of Education standards. And
at least for the personal finance.
Yes.
So semester 2, in December, we did have the curriculum reviewed by Professor Minke, and she has some great ideas for us to change and make it better.
Don't shake your head. You had great ideas.
Which is good because, I mean, those ultimately, that's what we used to make our presentation and took that into the school. So we needed that. We needed some good constructive criticism. In January, we made those corrections. February to March, we began compiling contact info. And like Maddie said, like Austin said, it was absolutely ridiculous to contact, to get an actual reply back from a teacher, and to get into these schools. And the problem wasn't like background checks or anything like that, but the problem was just this first line of communication that we were having. So we had to come up with all of that contact information on our own. And we have a slide for that to show you exactly where we've went. We, in March 2015, prepared our proposal and then gave it last year, our junior year.
So here's an example of the survey that we created. This was given to a J100 class of about 100 students, freshman students at IPFW. It's a basic business course. And some of the questions, as you can see, are, when you think about personal finance, what topics come to your mind? We gave them 5 topics that we thought would be good, a starting point, and had them rank them. And then we asked them questions about what do they hope to learn in college, or what do you wish you would have known before you were sitting here in the classroom. And we got such a good response from that. For example, like in the first question, when you think about personal finance, what topics come to mind? Debt management, 401ks, wants versus needs, saving money, banking. These are all freshman students sitting in college for the first week, first month, and saying, oh my gosh, I need to know how to do this. And so I think that it was a good time to give the survey because they were still kind of in that initial first shock. But we got some great results. So it's funny, when I turn the slide, you'll see the difference between a freshman's survey answer and a senior's survey answer.
So the seniors are a lot more put together, right? Not short and to the point. But they actually had some really good things to say. I'll just read a couple of these. These are all in response to question 1. I wish that I knew more about paying for college as an incoming freshman and how it would impact me long term. Second one says, living on your own is something I wish I would have known when entering college. It is much more expensive and hard to keep track of your spending. It is crucial. And so from some of these answers, we had a better idea. And I believe we actually, question 2, you see those five main things that we taught on. Based on some of these answers, we actually changed what those 5 main points were based on what seniors are saying that we need to teach high school students. So
this is a very colorful graph, but I promise I'll walk you through it. If you remember, the Likert scale right here, the 1 through 5 rating scale, this is the results for that. So basically what we're looking for here, this is the freshman class. We wanted to see if they answered 1 or 2, it means that they don't know a lot about that topic and that they wanted to learn more about it. So we're looking for which of these topics got the most responses in 1s and 2s. So we can see that the blue and the orange, it looks like are the most unknown, or they have the most interest in freshman students, and that's loans and investments. So we knew that that was going to be one of our lessons right off the bat. So that's freshman students.
Senior students are a little bit different here. There were less senior students, but you can see a lot of them concentrate into the 4s and 5s, and even kind of the 3s, I guess, for a couple of those aspects. So the seniors, we really wanted to see a shift in high school students when we present to them. We wanted to see a shift from what you just saw in the freshman students to something that you can see here with the senior students.
And you can still see that the blue and the orange, loans and investments, even as seniors, that was still the area that had the most ones and twos. So building the curriculum, we won't bore you with the details because it took a long time, but we had to first align all of the topics we wanted to talk about into core standards, because as we learned so much about teaching, but teachers in high school have to follow so many core standards and do so many, they're like objectives for each of the standard. They have to teach that in their classroom throughout the year. So we wanted to make sure that our lessons aligned with it, because we thought that would give us a better chance of actually getting into these high schools when we wanted to. And so here are the standards that we decided on. One is personal financial responsibility, which we saw kind of on the last slide in those results. Planning and money management.
Managing credit and debt, and saving and investing. And a lot of these core standards also helped us come up with the 5 main topics we are going to present as well, because these are directly out of the Department of Education standards for the state of Indiana.
Cool. So here's an example of the curriculum. This is what's getting passed around. We did 5 lessons. Each lesson is about 20 minutes. And so just depending on the class length, when we went into the high schools, depended on how many lessons we did. Some classes were like, yeah, we are on a block schedule and we have 75 minutes. And some classes said, well, we're on a Wednesday schedule and you get 40 minutes. So we had to tailor based on what that teacher wanted us to talk about that day. So here are the 5 lessons that we decided on for our curriculum. And you can read those, and included in the curriculum, and this was some of the training that we had to do, like the teacher training that we had to go through. We had to include some immersive learning, classroom engagement, a vital question, which is at the top of each of our curriculum slides, and then the personal experience, which was easy for us to talk about, especially being through 4 years of college now, and also the main topics.
Here's just one slide of our presentation. And I wish I could bring up the presentation, because a lot of the slides are, I think, better than this one. But they incorporate things that you want to have as a teacher teaching high school students. So that you want the students to be engaged, you want it to be clear, probably as brief as possible, while also engaging on like deep learning. And how do you exactly do that? Well, as you can see, we have a URL up here. So we would have examples, and for this example, we would write on the wipe-off board, what are 5 colleges that you students want to go to? And you get the normal, like IU, Purdue, some Notre Dame, some IPFW, and I mean, Notre Dame's like $40,000 a year. So we would say, hey, $40,000 a year, you want to go to Notre Dame? Okay, let's plug that into this student loan interest calculator, show them that, well, you're going to be paying $100,000 in student loan interest over the next 20 years or so.
And their jaws just hit the
and literally
floor
they'd be
every
like,
time. They'd
like
we'd always say, what school do we want to say that we're going to? Notre Dame, Notre Dame.
Yeah. And then they do things like, oh, I want to go to Notre Dame, and I probably won't get any scholarships. I'll pay $40,000, but I want to pay it off in 5 years.
Yeah, we'd say,
and I'd
how
be
long
like,
do you
well,
want
that's
to
not
pay
going to happen.
5 years.
And their minimum payments would be like $1,000 a month. And, I mean, but this is good stuff because it teaches them that, hey, that's probably in most cases not going to be the real world scenario that you're going to encounter. So I think it was a good exercise. In this particular slide, we brought up some average salaries. There's a McDonald's worker up there. That was my first job. And I could connect with some students on a more personal level because a lot of students worked at McDonald's. But we wanted to show them the benefits of a college education wherever they may go, whether that's IPFW, Indiana Tech, IU, wherever they go, outweighs whatever costs that's going to inflict upon them.
Yeah, we didn't want to scare them by showing them the crazy interest amount, but hopefully by seeing that jump in salary helps that interest amount or even that loan amount not be so scary. So here's the timeline for the last year. What have we been up to? In the summer, we compiled all of our contact information and started emailing schools because some of the schools are on a year-round schedule now, and so they start in July. So we wanted to get right in their inbox when school started. We created the survey, which was the exact same one that we gave the freshman students so we could correlate the data. We just had to change a little bit of the wording. We decided to eliminate churches. Initially, we were going to go to churches as well because the youth group population in Northeast Indiana is really high. But we found that most of the students in these youth groups were overlapping with the students in the classroom. So we thought we would make better use of our time and go to more classrooms than try to do both churches and schools. So we made that decision. We added a lot of extra classes to our contact sheet. And then we started visiting the classes, and about every Friday for the last year or so, we've been in schools giving these presentations. And then today, delivering the symposium.
Okay, here's our exact contact list and all the schools that we ended up going to. Now, I think how many schools do you think we actually contacted? Like 20 at least? I know we asked some of you guys, hey,
yeah.
what's a teacher that we can contact at Leo for Andrew? And so we would contact all of these teachers, wrote them a very detailed email. Hey, this is exactly what we're planning on doing. We even sent them the presentation. We sent them the curriculum. And I would say probably half for a long time just didn't even answer, which I thought was interesting. We're just like Austin's project. We're willing to go in. We're willing to teach students. Hopefully, we know what we're talking about. But a lot of teachers weren't willing to put in the time. We would even switch their period for ours, so they wouldn't have to teach. They would just have to listen. So these are the schools we actually ended up going to. The two schools that we did more than one classroom at was Adams Central and East Noble. Again, like I said, East Noble was right before Christmas break. We did 5 classes there.
And Columbia City. That was we just went to Columbia City. So
Columbia City was last.
Fresh on the brain.
So we stayed all day there, and that was a great experience.
So the experience in the classroom was so awesome. Like, we had a preconceived notion of what it was going to be like, and it wasn't really what we thought it was going to be like in a good way. So we would start off our presentation and say, we have this presentation, here's what it's about, but we would much rather answer your questions if you have them. And no topic is off limits. It doesn't have to be about personal finance. And so we'd start our presentation per usual, get a few questions about investments or stocks and bonds or budgeting. And then at the end, it always, no matter what school we went to, it seemed like always turned into a 20-minute plus question period of how do I schedule for classes? How do I sign up for scholarships? Is college scary? Are professors scary? What
I got
are
a couple
exams
questions
like?
that were, do you party? Or
Yeah.
how much do you party in school?
We got a few of those.
I was like,
were
man,
funny.
I don't have time to party.
Yeah, like, do you know
I'm
my
here
schedule?
right now.
Yeah. So it was just cool to see that most of the time students had a lot more concerns about just how to do college than really about personal finance and money management. So we felt like we really helped them out and gave them a little bit of peace of mind, or at least we hope we did. On that. We talked a little bit about study abroad since we've both been abroad. Just a lot of different things that they had questions about that we weren't expecting, but weren't mad that they asked, that's for sure. So we also gave out Dormer Business School, the Dormer Dialogues, and those were a big hit too.
So like Manny said, we ended up giving the same survey to high school students after we gave our presentation. So
I'm going to pass out a few of their responses.
Yeah.
They're all anonymous, but they're just like kind of fun to read.
Some of them are pretty funny.
Some of them, one guy said he wants to learn how to cut his arm off and sell it on the black market to pay for his student loans. We said, we can't help you with that.
So we had obviously a few of those
can just pass them
students where they would just come up with really funny answers. But most of them were actually legitimate concerns the students had and legitimate answers. So here are a few of those. Again, I believe all of these are in response to question 1.
Yes.
High school students, I would like to know approximately how much money I may spend throughout college, including books, tuition, and my dorm. I hope to learn how to budget and how much money you spend in 1 month at college. Also, what an average starting salary is, which we kind of talked about. My favorite one is this last one. I hope to ask experienced people about their experience and for their advice. which is I thought was pretty cool for high school students. I mean, that's a real answer that even college students like seniors, they have to learn that. Oh, I don't know this. I need to go ask someone for their advice. And that's part of the reason why we were there. So it's pretty cool to see them recognize that.
So here is a compilation of, at the top is the high school students that gave took the survey that you're looking at right now. And then here are the J100 IPFW freshman students. So the high school students' results reflect their answers after they've seen our presentation, after we've spoken to them about what these guys said we should teach them about. And this was so rewarding to see, is that you can see that most of their responses are in the 3s and 4s, which is exactly what we wanted, because in reality it probably would have been in the 1s and 2s if we would have given the survey before we would have actually given our presentation.
Real quick, if you can stay on that slide.
Yep.
Pretty interesting to see that a lot of their 1s are pretty flat. So there's not a big spike in, what is that, loans and investments that there were in the freshman students. We spent a lot of our time here.
They were so interested.
They were extremely interested in those two topics. So it doesn't make it's no surprise to me that those are the lowest scores.
And in every school too. It was always about investments, which shocked us.
So just kind of comparing those two results, like Maddie said, the high school students were surveyed after we gave our presentation. The J100 students were surveyed the fall of their freshman year without listening to any sort of presentation. Just whatever education they had received in high school is what they came in with. Survey results are concentrated in the 3 or 4 for high school score rates. I think it's because of a higher level of confidence. If in one day to be able to learn all of this information that we're presenting might be a little unrealistic, but even if a student's willing to just do a quick Google search of like that student loan interest calculator that I came up with, and being able to educate themselves more often and easier, I think that's probably a higher level of confidence that I see in those students. What's interesting is that, like Maddie was talking about when we said, hey, we'd rather answer any other question than what we are presenting on right now, those questions that they did ask us at the end of presentations were probably the most important aspect of this presentation, of this project. Just like Austin said in his presentation, it's about educating the students and getting them excited. We noticed when we came into a school, especially Northrop, I noticed this at Northrop a lot, the students were unruly, they were disrespecting, they were getting up and out of their seats, their teacher had no control, which that's not a bad thing, but I noticed, I actually told Maddie, I was like, man, I hope they're not like that for us. But when we started talking, they were calm, they were listening, they were respectful, which I think is probably, we knew what we were talking about, we had a plan of what we were going to talk about, but I think some of that might be that, students aren't introduced to this in schools anymore. So are we teaching them things that we actually need to know about and they actually need to know about? And if they're interested in this, and if they're willing to listen and pay attention, then why aren't we teaching them more of that? Mm-hmm. So I thought that was interesting. And
I also think it helped that we were so close to their age. Like here we were standing in front of them going through everything that we were talking about. And so for them, we were only, 3 or 4 years mm-hmm. older than them. And I think that helped us connect with them on a really personal level, and that helped tremendously. So we took a lot of photos. There's not a photo from every classroom because we had to make sure that the district had a photo release for students on file in order to take their photos. But here are some of them. So you can see East Noble and Adams Central, Northrop, and there's Adams Central in one of their new hybrid learning classrooms. That was cool to see. We got to go to a few new tech schools, and it's neat to see how those function.
They had the best questions.
Yeah.
New Tech Academy, really good.
Columbia City, working on our surveys. Everywhere we go, we had to have a visitor badge and get a background check and all of that fun stuff. So pretty excited.
They took our driver's license. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
They scanned it, and our badge was our driver's license.
Yeah, it was so cool. That was that one. We were so excited about it. And then Hicksville was our very first school back in August of last year. And then there we are at Wayne High School, excited about getting our background checks out of the way. This was one of the coolest things. We weren't expecting at all. We went to Columbia City a few weeks ago, and they were an awesome class. They had tons of great questions, and then these came in the mail for us shortly thereafter, and we're passing them around. But it's so rewarding to read some of the things they said. Like, for example, thank you for sharing and opening our eyes to college. Thank you for sharing your stories with us. That's how we knew that we maybe made a personal connection to them. And our goal wasn't to change hundreds of people's lives and teach them all about personal finance, but if we could have impacted one person, it would have been worth it for us. And so this was kind of validation of that.
What was neat is that, I mean, you guys have seen some of the surveys. Some of the answers for the high school students were really funny, really short. And, you know, they had to take that survey, right? We required them to. These thank you sheets, I'm drawn to the quote in the top right on the left one. It says, "Thanks for the helpful websites and good info." The teacher, I don't know if the teacher here required them to write some sort of longer answer on these thank you notes, but a lot of the students actually did. And I know when I was in high school, I'd just be like Logan Timbrook and write my name. And
thanks.
But I mean, some of these students wrote, I mean, like, look at this. These are a couple students here, but they're longer answers and they're like legitimate thank yous for us being in there.
Trenton. You guys are awesome. Yes.
And so here's just teacher feedback, and I won't read this because it's pretty long, but this is a teacher from Garrett, which I think was our second or third school, and that was a really good one. Those kids, smaller class, but they had a lot of good information, good questions for us.
I like how she said the students appreciated your insight since you're much closer to their generation than their teacher. That was just so helpful and something we totally undermined when we were making the presentation. With that, does anyone have any questions? Yes, Brian.
Yeah, Brian.
So, like, you guys got like the IRB certification, and you went through the whole trouble of complying with the state standards. Like, after you go through all of that work, and it takes you so long, like, what was probably like the most rewarding part of the whole project?
It's a great question. I think for me, it was the conversations we had with students after. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of students would come up to me. I shared this story of, I had like the investment section, I talked about that. And I shared this story of how I like invested some money and I lost a bunch of it and I was going to be like a really bad financial advisor and all this stuff. And what was interesting though is that the kids took that story and they like wanted to know what I did. And they wanted to know exactly like what app I used, the money, I mean, really detailed, like how much money I put into it and all this stuff.
Yeah,
that they probably shouldn't be asking.
I'll take a seat on that day.
But no, I thought that was really cool is having those conversations because heck, even some of my finance classmates, I can't have those conversations with.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really neat how kids were interested in what we were doing in college, what they could be doing.
Yeah, I would, to go along with that, we were at Wayne High School, I think. It was their new tech classroom. And their period, like the bell had rung, and I don't know about you, but when I was in high school, like the bell rings, you're out the door, like you don't stay after class. And everyone stayed and like huddled around this table that we were just sitting at to end the class period while they were working on some free write or something. And they stayed and were asking us all kinds of questions and wanted to know where they could get more information and what websites do I use. And so that was the most rewarding, was that no one told them to come up to us after class and ask us questions or to thank us for being there. They just did it. Mm-hmm. So
we brought a syllabus one day as well to class.
So everyone wanted to know, like, what's the syllabus?
I mean, just know, just like no awareness of, hey, your professor says a paper's due this date, and if you turn it in later than that, you're going to get a 0 on it.
And their jaws would hit the
floor. And but we brought in, I think it was one of my business courses, J401, which is kind of like a senior level class, and it had exactly what was due each day. And I think that was a really good lesson for them, seeing what in a year they're going to come into. Another
funny thing was when they would ask like how you schedule classes, because they're so used to sitting in class from 7:30 to 2:30 or whatever it was. And we would say like, oh, you can schedule just depending on what your preference is. And we said, for example, we haven't had a Friday class since freshman year. And they all look around and get so excited. So it was introducing those kinds of things to them about how it's a different learning experience. That was really cool to see. Yeah.
I'm somebody that's interested in doing something like you guys did or Austin did, and I was wondering if you thought that you got your message across in that one time that you went and spent with them, or you thought that maybe next time, like picking a school, like do you think that reaching more people was more effective, or do you think that like sticking with one school and going for multiple lessons, since they had so many questions?
Right, that's a good question. I think that like we were very ambitious in the beginning, and you saw that we were like, we're gonna reach 650 students, and we're just gonna get through, get through as many as we can. And it was almost a blessing in disguise in the end to only get to 350 because we were able to spend so much more time with them. And the periods aren't that long anyways, but it was us taking the entire period rather than giving a lesson and say, yep, check those students off. Like we were starting to reach our goal. So I'd say in that circumstance, quantity is not as important as quality.
I think we definitely got our message across. My advice to you is make sure you have some sort of presentation that you know what you're going to say, and make sure you're willing to answer questions. And I think along those lines, you're going to be successful. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah.
Are there any plans for this to be continued next year in the future?
In the works right now.
Yeah.
Well, Logan and I both accepted jobs in Fort Wayne, so we'll be around to hopefully continue. Right now we just want to make sure that the contacts that we're getting are solid contacts and that they're not going to fizzle out after 1 year of us going there. And so in the future, and we had talked about, actually Melissa and I talked about, we went to Africa a few months ago anyways, that's another story. We talked about there that we might be able to partner with the passport program in the business school and offer passport points for people who might want to actually continue on and give this presentation, which would be perfect because business students need a lot of passport points to graduate. Yeah?
Along the same lines, do you know how many of the instructors for these classes are going to actually use your presentation?
I don't.
We don't.
I don't know.
We gave them everything.
We provided the materials to them. We'd never asked them directly, will you use this or not?
It'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To see if they would continue.
And could you just go back to the enrollment slide, which
Yeah.
was somewhat early on? I just have a question about that.
There.
Is the term enrollment really what you mean here? I mean, over how many years was this enrollment data?
This was just the 2014 to 2015, a 2-year span of data.
You had almost 7,000 enrolled or applicant? Or
Applicant.
So enrolled is really not the true term.
Right, that's just what they call the archive, is enrollment
Okay,
data.
with all this terminology, like we have admitted students now which are not admitted. I mean,
Yeah.
I
know what
they
you mean.
applied, they're on the common application, but they were never
Yes.
admitted. So
Right.
I think the terms really need to be real.
Okay,
Mhm.
we can definitely.
So,
have-
good.
I have a follow on to what you were talking about with the high schools as well. You guys mentioned you used some of your student resources in terms of your friends and people that you knew as, hey, do you have a high school teacher that we might be able to contact? I wondered if you could contrast that approach to just sort of the broad. You mentioned that a lot of the teachers didn't even respond to you at all. Even if you just responded and said, sorry, but I don't think we have time for this, or, thank you for the offer, but we're not interested. Did you find a better response when you knew, and did you ask, when you contacted those teachers, did you say, I know so-and-so, or I got your name from such and such, and I wondered
Yes.
how different those experiences were?
If we knew someone that gave their name, we always said we received your name from this and this person. And I
That was
don't.
so helpful
Yeah.
for a lot of, like, for example, Dusty said,
Mhm.
Mrs. Boots, I started my email with, Dusty thought that you would be a great resource, and she was thrilled when Dusty's name came up because she was such a great student of hers.
Some of the teachers that we emailed, though, I think Leo was one of them. Andrew went to Leo High School, and I never received a reply back. So I don't.
Thanks, Andrew.
It's
Just
not.
kidding.
It's not his fault. It's not his fault. I'm sure he.
Thanks a lot.
I'm sure he was a great student, but we didn't receive a reply just because we mentioned their name.
Yeah. Sorry.
Like if you we were to do the passport points, I know you guys are really busy getting ready to graduate and everything, so we haven't had, but if you're still sticking around, you know, we had that conversation about how it'd be great if we could try to involve some more students, because I think particularly if you went back to your own high school, then they already know, some of those students know you, or they know a sibling, or a friend, or cousin, or whatever. And I think that those questions that you were talking about at the end would really, that would resonate with students if it was someone who had gone to their own high school.
Mm-hmm.
And so we could kind of, I mean, not that you'd have to have gone there, but I think
Yeah,
it could
give
be an added
an
factor.
outlet.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's interesting, and we kind of talked about this during our practice session, is why did we have to come up with all of those contacts? You see a school that is IPFW, great school, awesome school. Students should know about the opportunities they can find here. But with decreasing enrollment, why is there not a connection with these high schools that are bringing in all of these students and have in the past? So I think for people in the future, like Maddie wants to do a project like this, we should have a database. And if this is the start of it, then great. But we should have a database of teachers to contact at these high schools who are giving us students.
Yeah, we found that like most of these students who were planning to enroll or were interested in applying to IPFW, like we were the first face that they had seen from IPFW, or the first touch point that they had gotten from IPFW. And I think that's what fueled those questions that we were talking about at the end, that were more college specific rather than finance or money management specific.
Yeah, in the back.
Okay. Based on the questions that the students were asking you, like for example, like they weren't aware that you can schedule your own classes, and you know what's a syllabus, you know, and on top of that, the financial information that they needed about funding a college education. So what do you think about, based on those type of questions? What do you think about the viability of, say, like once a month meeting with like a high school club kind of thing about like college prep, and where you like walk them through? It's like, okay, well, scholarships, how do you apply for loans? What does it mean after you leave college, and different types of loans? But and also like trying to get them like mentally prepared for college. Like to say maybe beginning in the 9th grade. Do you think it's kind of like a viable project?
I think that it would be a great idea. I remember one student saying, he was a senior though, so he wasn't a freshman, but he said, "This is all hitting me at once." And like we all know that feeling. And so if there was a way to help ease that a little bit, you're going to get that shock a little bit when you come to college. But if there was any way, an after-school program or a club or something, that would at least let them like dip their toes in the water and see what it's all about before we throw them in.
I think it should be with older high school students. We did actually one class at Hicksville High School with sophomores, and they did not care what we were saying at all. So I think junior and senior year is really when it hits them. Oh crap, I'm going to college in 2 years.
Yeah.
I think if you can do it then, that would have the biggest impact.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great idea.
We did a freshman class too at East Noble, and they weren't either as interested. I think they just don't think it's applicable at that time. But then they realize a year later, oh man, I should have listened to what they said.
Yeah. Thank you.
Maddie?
Overall, it seems like your project was pretty successful, but if you could change anything about your project, what would you want to change?
I know right off the bat, I would want to survey the students before they listen to our presentation and after. We just surveyed them afterwards, and so we would like to think that it changed and that the correlation went a little bit higher, but maybe they're just really confident in themselves and we would have had the same results. So I know that's one thing right off the bat. I don't know if you have anything to add.
I don't really know, honestly. I think I'd make the survey something different, but I don't know what I would do. I think the survey was good, but I really liked the conversations apart from the survey.
Yeah, if we could have captured that somehow and brought it here, that would have been really cool.
That's a good question. Olivia?
So from a secondary education perspective of things, being a teacher, having those standards like already set for you would be huge, and also kind of like knowing what the students need to know, because like as a teacher, you have an idea of what they need to know, but like you said, it's hard to kind of find that area. So have you thought about like sitting down and talking with the teachers? Just kind of saying like, so here at IPFW, the freshmen going in, this is what they need to know. And then kind of seeing if your curriculum could work in through that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I would say in a way we tried to do that with the email. Like we would set up the email with, we surveyed students and here's what they told us as freshmen that they wish they would have known. Because of the time constraint, we would normally say, which 2 or 3 areas do you want us to cover in 40 minutes? And they could pick based on the class or what they've already taught that year, what was best for them. But it would be helpful if time allowed or if they were willing to actually sit with them, show them the results, because most of the time, I mean, I don't think we ever shared the actual results. It's way more powerful when you see it in a graph than us just saying, yep, they said that they wanted to learn about investments.
Mm-hmm. Also, there are quite a few teachers that told us that things had changed since they had gone to school.
Yeah. A lot of people
so
said that.
I'm sure they would have some great.
You're
I'm sure they'd
right.
have some great insight, but I don't know if they would be able to provide. Like, this is what my students really need to know. Maybe they would. I don't know, but I think would be wise to ask them what they think. Also, like Maddie said, they were just excited that we were willing to come in and speak to them. And so we gave them the presentation, and they could, pick and choose kind of what they wanted to do. So if they thought one was more important than the others, then they could dictate that.
Yeah. Did you
find? Oh, go ahead. Did you find that the teachers that were willing to let you come in were mainly teachers who taught a business class already there, or was it some other subject?
Good question.
Good question. We actually reached out. Our primary point of contact, we tried to have it be a business class or an accounting class or an econ class, that sort of thing. So right off the bat, we were kind of already narrowing it down just because we thought that they would be more interested than like an English class having us in. A lot of times we would email and they might say, I'm not the person, that's not really my class expertise, but this person might. And they would send us to someone else. And so sometimes our contacts ended up being passed around until we found like the right audience.
Can you go to the contact slide?
Yep.
It actually shows what they teach at that school. So this class subject is what they actually teach. So all of them have some sort of impact on business at their school.
Yeah.
I have another question about whether you had talked with administrators at all. You both presented so professionally, and I'm sure in the classroom you did the exact same thing, that I wonder if some of the teachers might have been hesitant when you just get an email from some college students, hey, I'm doing this project. I wondered if you had any contact with the administrators, if they could put you in touch with the teachers, or if there's some way, maybe in upcoming projects for the students that are going to be doing this kind of thing, if you think it would be helpful if you even were able to do a short 10-minute presentation about what it is you're going to do, or for them to see kind of you in action. I didn't know if you had any contact with like the principal, or if you just went directly to the teachers.
I had contact with the principal of Northrop only for the reason that he had to approve all speakers coming in. I never had any contact with any other administrators.
I did a few guidance counselors for like business and like business department heads, which I didn't even know existed in high schools. They would send me there. They would have to approve it basically, but they never actually saw us give the presentation, which might be helpful.
One of my roommates is an education major, and I know great source of information there. But he suggested going straight to the teachers because the teachers are able to make their own schedule and curriculum and like lay out what they want to do during the week. So I think that'd be good if we want to like come in and do multiple classrooms, meet with the administrators there and see who they think we could pair with in the school. But if we are focusing on one class or an accounting class or a business class, I think a teacher would probably be the best way to go. Yes.
Did you get a sense about the student background as far as if they were first generation, they would be considered a first generation college student? Were you able to sense that at all in your presenting?
Not entirely.
I couldn't. No.
Not really. Maybe, I would say maybe it's school specific. Like you might see who might have more interest in college than others.
I was born and raised in Fort Wayne and went through the school system here. So I can tell you, just from my own classmates, I know most of them were not first generation, but then there were other friends I had at other schools, and they were. So you're exactly right. I know there could be more of a target. I liked all the schools that you did go to. You had a great variety. But even for some of them that are not first generation, college has changed so much financially. It really is almost a new ballgame, even if your parents did go to college at some point. So I think it's a really valuable project. Excellent.
So like when I was in high school, I think probably a lot of other people, we had something that was sort of like this. It was called Junior Achievement. And I don't know about you guys, but I absolutely hated Junior Achievement. Because like it was some like 30-something person coming. There's nothing wrong with being 30 or older at all, but like it was always someone who was way like double our age coming in with a big old packet, and like it's so boring. You just drone through the lesson, everything like that, and then they leave, and it just feels like you just wasted a whole day. Because so I feel like it's definitely a lot more beneficial to have people who are closer in age to them and like dress professionally and like are successful doing that. But I guess I want to know, like, did any teachers shut you guys down because they said they had a program like Junior Achievement already? Or
None of mine did.
No.
We definitely thought of that when we were getting ready to contact that this might epically fail because of Junior Achievement, but no one really brought it up.
Any classes we did not go into were strictly because they didn't respond to us. No reason in particular.
Yeah.
Did you have any question to find out what their future plans were, whether they were even going to go to college or go directly into business or do something else?
Right. Every day that we went into the classroom, that was our first question that we posed was if there was any interest in college or what do you plan to do after you graduate high school. So just so that we could tailor our presentation a little bit. If most of the students were not planning to go to college, we could tailor it on here's how you get ready for the real world and here's how these concepts are going to help you that way. We didn't really collect any data per se on it, but we did ask that to kind of tailor how we were going to handle that class that day.
I can tell you that a majority of the students did expect to go to college.
And most of them to IPFW,
went to.
So that was really cool.
How much, this may be too personal, but how much does a personal finance planner make?
Depends how much commission you get.
Yeah.
I wish. It's unending, I guess, if you want it to be. So.
Unending, limitless. Yes.
I just want to say they did and I know I'm a little biased, but they did a really good job of getting into the high schools because we tried sort of an experiment with the faculty in our department this year to just reach out to high schools to do a little recruiting for business students. And we as faculty, ran into a lot of resistance. We were really surprised. So they did an amazing job.
Sue's being too modest. Sue didn't run into any resistance. The other faculty members did.
Because she's great. Because she's great.
But it's amazing. It's awesome to have the same experience. It was just really surprising. So I'm very impressed with how much content you have.
Thank you for the support along the way too. Appreciate that.